It's July 26th, 1994, and this is the Tuesday edition of Dateline NBC. Tonight.
Was there something in the air over this tiny town?
Having numbness in your legs or arms?
Why were so many feeling sick?
You'll find the same complainers all the time.
They saw trucks come and go.
We were sick for 3 days.
But then a stranger came to town.
I'm their worst nightmare, and darn proud of it.
Could their horror story happen where you live?
Dateline, with anchors Jane Pauley and Stone Phillips. With Brian Ross, Deborah Roberts, John Scott, Lee Thompson, Faith Daniels, Dennis Murphy, John Larson, and Lisa Myers. Dateline continues after this brief message. Coming up, residents of one tiny town fight back against the dangerous chemicals and the company they say were ruining their lives. People said what went on at this plant left them fighting for air.
I'm only 32 years old, and I don't feel like that I should be having these problems.
Some workers knew there was trouble.
We were just pressured to get the loads out with no regard to safety of the employees.
Then someone new came to town and gave them the power to fight back. Here again is Stone Phillips.
Imagine how you'd feel if you and your friends and neighbors got sick time after time, and no one seemed to be able to explain what was going on. You'd feel angry, confused, and fearful, and you'd be looking for some answers. Tonight, the story of a town where people were feeling all of those emotions, but didn't have the resources to fight back, until one woman stepped forward.
The explosion filled our lungs, burned our lungs.
I have suffered mouth ulcers, headaches, real bad headaches since January the 7th.
I was nauseous and had the headache, had all the symptoms of the sour gas exposure.
All of these incidents happened here at the Gibraltar Hazardous Waste Disposal and Recycling Plant just outside Winona, Texas. Gibraltar processes untreated toxic waste, some of the most lethal chemicals known to man. The entire operation requires the utmost care and precision, because if incompatible chemicals are mixed, the reactions can be violent.
We are paid to do our job well, and we're paid well for doing the job right.
John Mobley is founder and chairman of Gibraltar. The company president is Mike Stark.
I love the earth. I love the outdoors. I wouldn't be associated with a business that is accused of doing the things that our antagonists and our protagonists say that we do.
But ever since it opened 12 years ago, Gibraltar has been cited for violating its permit. Not once or twice or even a dozen times, but hundreds of times, causing groundwater contamination and toxic air emissions.
We don't know what we were exposed to, and these fumes were in our home. It made us sick. We were sick for 3 days.
Wanda Irwin and her husband Danny, who live just a quarter mile from the plant, say they've been subjected to fumes and odors for years, some of the worst coming on holidays.
You walk out the door and the first thing you smell is Gibraltar. All these toxic gases hit you in your face, and your kids can't even go outside and play with their toys on Christmas morning because the fumes are so bad.
The Irwins say that nearly everyone in their family has been sick with stomach and/or respiratory problems. 2 of the children have had seizures. Wanda's had all kinds of ailments.
I have liver problems. My heart will speed up sometimes past 200. I've had blackouts. I'm only 32 years old, and I don't feel like that I should be having these problems.
You having numbness in your legs or arms?
My right arm.
Your right arm, okay.
The fact is, in this town of only 457 people, there have been numerous unexplained medical problems, causing enough concern for residents to launch their own 5-year health study.
Try it one more time.
This 7-year-old has a growth problem. She's still wearing size 4 toddler clothes. Her sister was born with tumors in her mouth and webbed toes. This little boy is in the early stages of elephant man's disease, and it does not run in his family.
We have never had a violation or done anything which was an imminent danger to the environment or to human health.
So all of these odors and these burning sensations that people complain about, these are imagined?
You look at the number of complaints and go back and look at the number of people, and you'll find the same complainers all the time.
One family that frequently complained is Marion Stike and her son Randy, whose house is located just 2 miles downwind from the plant.
I would be working in my yard, and chemicals, I would just be engulfed in a plume of chemicals. It might not last for 3 or 4 minutes, but I would be deathly sick.
Mrs. Stike says after a toxic emission in October '91, their chickens stopped laying eggs, and her breasts began lactating as if she were pregnant at age 66.
They were swollen up under my armpits like that, and my daughter came to hug me for my birthday, and I couldn't take her hug. It was too painful.
Mrs. Stike has also suffered headaches, memory loss, and uncontrollable trembling, caused, her doctors say, by chemicals in her blood. They say the yellow and blue areas in her brain scans show impaired functioning, consistent with chemical poisoning, and told her she had to move.
I wanted to live in my home. I wanted to live in my grandma's house. But that's not going to happen now.
Residents like Mrs. Stike and the Irwins say for years their complaints have been dismissed by company officials and regulators alike. Gibraltar paying fines and promising to do better, but nothing ever really changing.
I have gotten so tired of calling and nothing happening.
I tell her, I said, why are you calling all the time? She said, well, I think I ought to report it. I said, they ain't not going to do nothing, you know, they hadn't done anything yet.
And things might never have changed in this rural East Texas town if a housewife with a dream of starting an exotic game park hadn't decided that this property was the perfect place to do it.
AD, it's Phyllis Glazer.
Phyllis Glazer moved to Winona 3.5 years ago and says she found out about Gibraltar when she drove her son to school one day through a toxic cloud.
My throat was chemically burned. I have a hole through my septum. Ulcers now running up and down my throat and mouth and nose.
When she learned about Gibraltar's history of violations and the state's inaction, she was incensed.
You have something totally out of control. You have to stop it. You have to stop it, and we must.
Of course, other residents had tried to do just that, to no avail. But Phyllis Glazer had something the others did not, a sizable inheritance.
It takes big money to fight a battle like this. So small little towns that have no one to help them are going to lose everything, and that isn't right.
Glazer says she knew what it meant to feel helpless because her father, a Jewish immigrant, had been forced to flee Europe during the Holocaust. She vowed that she would never turn her back on people whose calls for help were being ignored.
I can't leave the people here and walk out. I can't let them be sacrificed to save myself. I can't do it.
So Glazer turned a group of housewives and their husbands into Moses, mothers organized to stop environmental sins. And every Gibraltar incident became a media event.
And free assembly.
She also used her inheritance to hire attorneys from one of the best law firms in Dallas to challenge Gibraltar at state regulatory hearings and in court.
Compliance is not promises or public relations campaign.
Because of Glazer's efforts, reporters began looking into the problems at Gibraltar, and state and federal regulators started paying more attention to the company's continuing violations. In November '92, the Texas Attorney General sued Gibraltar to stop violating the Clean Air Act. And in January '93, federal agents from the Environmental Protection Agency and the FBI launched a criminal investigation into possible falsification of records.
It's not surprising there's been an investigation. These people want to close this plant. They will stop at nothing.
What this company has been experiencing from Phyllis Glazer is environmental McCarthyism.
I'm their worst nightmare, and darn proud of it.
We are proud to be professional environmentalists, and we thank you for the opportunity to express that.
With Glazer attacking on all fronts, Gibraltar staged a demonstration of its own, bussing in supporters and employees to turn this state hearing into a company pep rally.
I am an employee at Gibraltar Chemical Resources, and I do say that with pride.
We attend monthly safety meetings to keep up to date.
Our records are double-checked, not only by us,
but by the management team. And
It was a heart-rending thing to hear those people talk about how well they thought the company performed. I couldn't have been more pleased.
But Mr. Mobley might not be pleased with what we heard from some other employees who asked us not to reveal their identities for fear of losing their jobs at Gibraltar.
We were just pressured to get the loads out with no regard to the safety of the employees.
The equipment we use is old and worn out and completely inadequate for the job.
People are constantly doused with chemicals that stay on their clothing all day, all night, that soak right into the skin.
Are workers commonly doused with chemicals?
Absolutely not. The regulators wouldn't allow us to run a facility like that.
Deny, deny. They never did anything. They didn't even smell any odors.
The matter before you today is extraordinary.
Finally, last fall, after years of company denials and government inaction, a showdown at the state capitol. Phyllis Glazer, John Mobley, and Gibraltar President Mike Stark, all present.
The increase in temperature and pressure was so great in the tank that it blew the mixer gasket out of the top of the tank.
There had been yet another accident at Gibraltar, and the company had waited more than 24 hours to report it, in violation of the rules. The newly formed Texas Natural Resources Conservation Commission was voting on an emergency order to temporarily shut the company down.
We blew it. We flat blew it.
While apologizing for the incident, Mobley said shutting the plant down, even temporarily, was unnecessary, and that the problem was being blown out of proportion once again by Phyllis Glazer.
And I hope that you will realize that there is an effort to close this plant by a malicious group that doesn't use facts.
I'm asking that the state of Texas and this agency protect us from Gibraltar and its environmental insult to our health and environment.
This time, at last, the state of Texas acted.
I move that the emergency order proposed by the executive director be entered.
Gibraltar was ordered to cease operations until it could prove it was able to properly manage toxic waste.
I can't believe it. I can't.
Glazer had spent more than $500,000, draining her inheritance, but not her spirits.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Oh, we won.
Gibraltar Chemical was forced to shut down for 2 weeks, then ran at reduced capacity for another month while equipment was repaired and chemical testing improved. And just 2 weeks ago, the company agreed to pay more than $1 million to settle the Texas Attorney General's lawsuit. About half of that money earmarked for upgrading the local water system. But air monitors and emission control devices mandated by the state have yet to be installed. The deadline is the end of this year. Phyllis Glazer says the battle is not yet over.